Hi, Grandma here, and I'm reading Cheaper by the Dozen. And I'm going to read chapter 10, but I'm only going to read the first part because it's a very long chapter. My computer doesn't really like long readings. This chapter is called Motion Study Tonsils. What could that be about? I am going to guess that it is going to be that the dad thinks he has a better way of having people's tonsils removed. We'll see. Dad thought the best way to deal with sickness in the family was simply to ignore it. "We don't have time for such nonsense," he said. "There are too many of us. A sick person drags down the performance of the entire group. You children come from sound pioneer stock. You've been given health, and it's your job to keep it. I don't want any excuses. I want you to stay well." Except for measles and whooping cough, we obeyed orders. Doctor's visits were so infrequent, we learned to identify them with mother having a baby. Dad's mother, who lived with us for a while, had her own secret for warding off disease. Grandma Gilbreth was born in Maine, where she said the seasons were winter, July, and August. She claimed to be an expert in combating cold weather and in avoiding head colds. Her secret prophylaxis was a white bag filled and saturated with camphor, which she kept hidden in her bosom. Grandma's bosom offered ample hiding space, not only for the camphor, but her eyeglasses, her handkerchief, and if needs be, for the bedspread she was crocheting. Last year, as soon as the first frost appeared, she made 12 identical white camphor-filled bags for each of us. "Mind what Grandma says and wear those all the time," she told us. "Now, if you bring home a cold, it will be your own blessed fault, and I'll skin you alive." Grandma always was threatened to skin someone alive, or draw and quarter him, or scalp him like a red Indian, or spank him till his bottom was blistered. Grandma averred she was a great believer in spare the rod and spoil the child. Her own personal rod was a branch from the lilac bush which grew in the side lawn. She always kept a twig from this bush on the top of her dresser. "I declare you're going to catch it now," she would say. "Your mother won't spank you, your father's too busy to spank you, but your grandma's going to spank you till your bottom blisters." Then she would swing the twig with a vigor which belied her years. Most of her swings were aimed so as merely to whistle harmlessly through the air. I know that. I've heard that noise before. She'd land a few light licks on our legs, though, and since we didn't want to hurt her feelings, we'd scream and holler as if we were receiving the 21 lashes from a Spanish inquisitor. Sometimes she'd switch so vigorously at nothing that the twig would break. "Ah, you see, you were so bad that I had to break my whip on you. Now go right out in the yard and cut another one for me for the next time. A big thick one that will hurt even more than this one. Go along now, march." On the infrequent occasions when one of us became sick enough to stay in bed, Grandma and Dad thought the best treatment was the absent treatment. "A child abed mends best if left to himself," Grandma said, whilst Dad nodded approval. Mother said she agreed too, but that she proceeded to wait on the sick child hand and foot. "Here, darling, put my lovely bed jacket around your shoulder," Mother would tell the ailing one. "Here's some magazines and scissors and paste. Now, how's that? I'm going down to the kitchen and fix you a tray. Then I'll be up and read to you." A cousin brought measles into the house, and all of us except Martha were stricken simultaneously. 2 big adjoining bedrooms upstairs were converted into a hospital ward, one for the boys, one for the girls. We suffered together for 2 or 3 miserable, feverish, itchy days, while Mother applied cocoa butter and ice packs. Dr. Burton, who had delivered most of us, said there was nothing to worry about. He was an outspoken man, and he and Dad understood each other. "I'll admit, Gilbreth, that your children don't get sick very often," Dr. Burton said, "but when they do, it messes up the public health statistics for the entire state of New Jersey." Because 12 of them got sick, that's going on the records, and it's boosted the number of kids sick because there are so many of them. "How come, Mr. Bones?" Dad asked. I have to turn in a report every week on the number of contagious diseases I handle. Ordinarily, I handle a couple of cases of measles a week. When I report that I had 11 cases in a single day, they're liable to quarantine the whole town of Montclair and close up every school in Essex County. Well, that's probably exceptionally light cases, Dad said. Pioneer stock, you know. As far as I'm concerned, measles is measles, and they've got the measles. Probably even Pioneers got the measles, Dad said. Probably so. Pioneers had tonsils too, and so do your kids. Really ugly tonsils. They ought to come out. Well, I never had mine out. Let me see them, Dr. Burton ordered. There's nothing the matter with them. For God's sake, don't waste any time, said Dr. Burton. Open your mouth and say, ah. Tappan opened his mouth and said, ah. I thought so, Dr. Burton nodded. Yours ought to come out too. Should have had them taken out years ago. I don't expect you to admit it, but you have sore throats, don't you? You have one right this minute, haven't you? Nonsense, said Dad. Never sick a day in my life. Well, let yours stay in if you want. You're not hurting anybody but yourself, but you really should have the children's taken out. I'll talk it over with Lily, Dad promised. Once the fever from the measles had gone, we all felt fine, although we still had to stay in bed. We sang songs, told continued stories, played spelling games and riddles, had pillow fights. Dad spent considerable time with us, joining in the songs and all the games except the pillow fights, which were illegal. He still believed in letting sick children alone, but with all of us sick, or all but Martha, at any rate, he became so lonesome he couldn't stay away. We came into the wards one night after supper and took a chair over in a corner. We noticed that his face was covered with spots. Daddy, asked Anne, what's the matter with you? You're all broken out in spots. Oh, you're imagining things, said Dad, smirking. I'm all right. You've got the measles. Oh, I'm all right, said Dad. I can take it. Daddy's got the measles. Daddy's got the measles. Dad sat there grinning, but our shouts were enough to bring Grandma on the run. What's the matter here? She asked, and then to Dad. Mercy sakes, Frank, you're covered with spots. It's just a joke, Dad told his mother weakly. Get yourself to bed. A man your age, you ought to know better. Shame on you. Grandma fumbled down her dress, put on her glasses. She peered into Dad's face. I declare, Frank Gilbreth, she told him, sometimes I think you're more trouble than all your children. Red ink. And you think it's a joke to scare a body half to death. Red ink. A joke, Dad repeated. Very funny, Grandma muttered as she stalked out of the room. I'm splitting my sides. Dad sat there glumly. Is it red ink, Daddy? We asked, and he agreed with him that it was. Indeed, a very good joke. Is it? You really had us fooled. You'll have to ask your grandma, Dad sulked. She's a very smart lady. She knows it all. Martha, who appeared immune to measles, nevertheless wasn't allowed to come into the wards. She couldn't go to school since the house was quarantined, and the week or two of being an only child made her so miserable that she lost her appetite. Finally, she couldn't stand it anymore and sneaked into sick rooms to visit us. You know you're not allowed to be in here, said Anne. Do you want to get sick? Martha burst into tears. Yes, she sobbed. Oh, yes. Don't tell us you miss us. Why, I should think it would be wonderful to have the whole downstairs to yourself and to be able to have Mother and Dad all by yourself at dinner. Dad's no fun anymore, said Mark. He's nervous. He says the quiet at the table is driving him crazy. Tell him that's not of general interest, said Ernestine. It was shortly after the measles epidemic that Dad started applying motion study to surgery to try to reduce the time required for certain operations. Surgeons really aren't much different than skilled mechanics, Dad said, except they're not so skilled. If I can get to study their motions, I can speed them up. The speed of an operation often means the difference between life and death. At first, the surgeons he approached weren't very cooperative. "I don't think it will work," one doctor told him. "We aren't dealing with machines. We're dealing with human beings. No two human beings are alike. No set of motions could be used over and over again." "I know it will work," Dad insisted. "Just let me take some moving pictures of operations and I'll show you." Finally, he got permission to set up his movie equipment in an operating room. After the film was developed, he put it in the projector, which he kept in the parlor, and showed us what he had done. In the background was a cross-section screen and a big clock with Gilbreth written across its face, and a hand which made a full revolution every second. Every doctor and nurse was dressed in white and had a number on his cap to identify him. The patient was on the operating table in the foreground. Off to the left, clad in a white sheet, was something that resembled a snow-covered Alp, a mountain. When the Alp turned around, it had a stopwatch in its hand, and when it smiled at the camera, you could tell through the disguise it was Dad. It seemed to us watching the moving pictures that doctors did a rapid, business-like job of a complicated abdominal surgery. But Dad, cranking the projector in back of us, kept hollering that it was stupidly incorporated. "Look at that boob," the doctor with number 3 on his cap. "Watch what he's going to do now. Walk all the way around the operating table. Now, see him reach way over there for that instrument, and then he decides he doesn't want that one after all. He wants this one. He should call the instruments names, and that nurse, number 6, she's his caddy. She should hand it to him. That's what she's there for. And look at his left hand, dangling there at the side. Why doesn't he use it? He could work twice as fast." The result of the moving picture was that the surgeons involved managed to reduce their ether time by 15%. Dad was far from satisfied. He explained that he needed to take moving pictures of 5 or 6 operations, all of the same type, so he could sort out the good motions from the wasted motions. The trouble was that most patients refused to be photographed, and hospitals were afraid of lawsuits. "Never mind, dear," Mother told him. "I'm sure the opportunity will come along eventually for you to get all the pictures that you want." Dad said he didn't like to wait, but when he started a project, he hated to put it aside and pick it up again piecemeal whenever he found a patient, hospital, and doctor who didn't object to photographs. Then an idea hit him, and he snapped his fingers. "I know," he said. "I've got it. Dr. Burton has been after me to have the kids' tonsils out. He says they really have to come out. We'll rig up an operating room in the laboratory here and take pictures of Burton." "Seems sort of heartless to use the children as guinea pigs," Mother said doubtfully. "It does, for a fact, but I won't do it unless Burton says it's perfectly all right. If taking pictures is going to make him nervous or anything, we'll have the tonsils taken out without the motion study." "Somehow or other, I can't imagine Dr. Burton being nervous," Mother said. "Me either. I'm going to call him. And you know what? I feel a little guilty about the whole deal. So as conscience balm, I'm going to let the old butcher take mine out too." "Well, I feel a little guilty about the whole deal too," said Mother. "Only thank goodness I had mine taken out when I was a girl." So next time I read, I'll read the second half of the story about the motion study and having the children's tonsils taken out. What could go wrong? Bye-bye.